So we've heard about access to expert advice. What about trial support? How can that be improved to help make more efficient and speedy the clinical trials? Well, here to tell us, Dr. Sabah Attar, who is at the Women and Children's Health at the University of Liverpool in the UK. Welcome. Your presentation, please. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Could I firstly just say it's a real honor and privilege to be presenting the work of many multiple partners. Saskia said it right when she said it doesn't take a single person to do this. It definitely doesn't take even 5, 10. What I'm presenting today is the work of a culmination of people for the last 6 years across all of the partnerships that we've already talked about. It would help if I have the... Great. Is this working? Okay. We needed a bit of a breather anyway from all of the intense information that preceded. I could perhaps start talking about my first slide anyway, which is the problem statement. We've already covered problems and the issues faced. But for us, when we looked at trial services and we thought about what needs to be addressed, it was about being specific. We didn't want to boil the oceans, as Mark said. What we wanted to do was to identify where we can make a difference. So we're not a CRO, we're not the trial team. What we are and what we wanted to do was address specific aspects that made things efficient with respect to trial site identification, site feasibility, and optimizing the conduct of the trial to focused interventions. And that's exactly what we aim to do. And through my slides, hopefully, I will be able to demonstrate. Perfect, they're working now. So I will be able to demonstrate how we did that. So what we've developed in set of solutions was facilitating a fast and high quality response to enable the selection of the right sites for pediatric trials and to ensure that there is efficient support provided across all of those sites across the countries in Europe to be able to ensure setup and conduct of those trials. What I will talk about for the next few slides are both the underpinning solutions as well as the services that are developed. And it will be a high-level overview, so I'm really hoping that majority of you are here tomorrow to be able to go through the detailed work with us. One of the first underpinning solutions that we identified and we put in place was the single point of contact. So the single point of contact service essentially ensures that we have one point of entry for any query related to, as Saskia mentioned, expert advice, protocol development, but also trial services such as feasibility and site identification. The single point of contact is contacted by sponsors, CRO, biotech, pharma, any small, medium-sized company. Any query that comes, SPOC triages it. We think about the best response. We have a metric-driven approach to provide a response within 2 working days, and then we are able to facilitate the communications between with the sponsor and between the sponsor and the national hubs, and the national hubs have the same for their own individual points of contacts to liaise with the sites. And this holds true for all the services that are provided through C4C. They're all provided through that single point, and all of the communications for the services are also through the single point of contact. The next underpinning solution is essentially the establishment of the national hubs. Now, our national hubs are established across Europe, and through the project, they were supporting 21 countries, 20 national hubs, and essentially, there were members that are currently academic-based institutes who already had strong links to the national pediatric research and clinical communities. Some were existing pediatric networks, some were newly established. But what this enabled us to do, and what this has leveraged, is that local knowledge, the local knowledge of the pediatric infrastructure, the pediatric lay of the land, the clinical subspecialties, the sites, the expertise, the pediatricians who work in those expertise, and the regular links that each national hub built with its sites, monthly communication cycles, quarterly reviews, all of these different aspects, taking into account that every country and every national hub works differently, we're able to leverage all of that information through the National Hub Service. So I'm going to focus now on the site identification and feasibility. So there's 2 slides. They're a bit busy on information. I'm going to take some time over these. With respect to how we roll out the site identification service and what was developed, as mentioned before, the SPOC undertakes a scoping call. This is where we gather your requirements, we understand the need and the scope of the work that needs to be provided, and we move into a contracting phase. Now, all of this process has been tried and tested, and I'll move on to the results of that test soon. With respect to the contracting stage, once we have agreed the scope of work and we have CDAs as well as contracts set up, we have a framework of contracts, as Mark had already alluded to, in terms of with existing companies and sponsors. We can put in master service agreements in place, which means that the contract needs only be a work order at this stage, if we already have an MSA in place. If we don't, we can set up a single service agreement, and then we can move to work orders fairly quickly. With the National Hub, we have National Hub collaboration agreements in place already between C4C Stichting and the National Hubs. Therefore, any work order that needs to be put into place can be agreed fairly effectively quickly. What this enables us to do is that within 10 working days from the request being scoped out and contracts being in place, we can give you a list of potential sites that are defined by the selection criteria that is required. With respect to the feasibility service, now this service, this needed an aspect of the confidentiality disclosure agreements being in place fairly quickly. What we wanted to enable was a framework that allowed us to have CDAs in place that was least cumbersome to the sponsor or querying trial team and was as effective to be able to enable information with respect to feasibility flow through fairly quickly from a large number of sites. Once we have a scoping call with the company, we can, in parallel almost, when we're discussing contracts, set up the CDA cascade, which is an innovative design cascade model really, which means that the sponsor only has to sign one CDA with C4C, and after that, C4C signs the CDA with the subsequent national hubs that are involved, and the national hubs sign it with all the sites. It's all time-driven, metric responsive, and we're able to undertake all of the CDAs, in majority of the cases, within 10 working days, from sponsor signing only one signature. And we start this in parallel with the work that we're doing when we start the contracts, and we're sending things out to the national hubs so that as things are ready to be sent out to the national hubs, protocol information, feasibility questionnaires, we can roll them out fairly effectively. There are another couple of aspects that perhaps it's useful to highlight out here, is that what we realized when we were trialing these services through the proof of viability trials, Mark mentioned that we've undertaken 11 trials, 8 of those were industry specific. What we realized is that every trial comes with a slightly different makeup. Everyone has a slightly different requirement. And what we've been able to do is that there's a couple of pause points, what we call internal and collaborative reflection points, what we do at those pause points is we really try and identify what are the requirements. Is there a local coordinators in place? Is there a CRO in place? Who do we need to link in at the global level? And who do our national hubs need to link in at the local level? So we've been able to provide services that are adaptive and reflexive and responsive to the needs of the trial team. With respect to our site identification and feasibility service, this is just one example of the timelines we've been able to achieve and demonstrate over the last few years. Across the 8 industry trials, we've in total conducted more than 280 feasibilities, and 83% of those feasibilities have been returned to the companies within the target timeline of 20 working days. This is including CDAs. With respect to the benefits, our companies are made aware of pediatric sites that were previously unknown to them, but even the sites and the investigators, they have increased access and opportunity. They have a clear means of communication with the national hubs. So there's no duplication of effort, and there's no duplication sets of communications with respect to individual trials or feasibility requests. And as I mentioned, and I think Mark perhaps calls it secret sauce, but it's the national hubs that do provide that support to the sites, to the investigators, to the local teams. And that's where the true benefits are realized. The next set of solutions that have been developed with the trial services that have been developed that are delivered by the national hubs. And these services are designed to make those interventional deep dives. Everywhere there is a block, we try and unblock it. And the mechanisms for that is that any trial that we take on the support for, we ensure that we have a communication cycle in place, and I'll go on to the tools later on. Very briefly, what this means is that what we can do is we can keep a high-level overview across the countries, across the sites, and we can intervene whenever the sponsor or the trial team requires, or we can be a bit more responsive, a bit more hand-holding. It all depends on what the requirement of the trial team is. Again, what to do is that we've been adaptive and responsive to the needs. So in some cases, we've had to find referral pathways to be able to expedite. We needed referral pathways to be able to expedite patient finding. In some cases, we've had to pivot and find new sites and investigators within countries, and we've been able to do that fairly quickly. I talked about the toolbox of solutions. So all of these activities and all of these services really does depend on how we've managed to underpin this with this toolbox of solutions that drive all of the work. We have core metrics that are specifically aligned to the trial life, that are also aligned to the processes that we aim to deliver. So things such as how quickly we can send a feasibility response to you, how quickly we can ensure that we can respond to a query with respect to site identification, how quickly the trial starts, if you have shared your setup timelines, if you have shared your recruitment timelines. We try and ensure that we can respond to that, and those are the core metrics. In addition to that, we found that there was this aspect of communication that we needed to clarify. The communication channels are usually quite convoluted and complex. And when we're working across multiple countries, we found that with local sponsor representative teams in place and with CROs in place sometimes, what really helps, and we developed this in response to one of the trials that we were supporting, was that we needed to have a roles and responsibility matrix. So we developed the RASI matrix, which was based on industry standards, and what we've done is we've rolled it out effectively and piloted it, and we found that really clarified communications up front. We have a communication cycle on a monthly basis. We meet with the trial team that we're supporting, and our national hubs meet with their sites as well on a routine basis to ensure that the portfolio is on track. We have reports and dashboards and performance management. And with the national hub and site standards, I'm going to go into a bit of a deep dive because this is worth spending some time over. So when we talked about underpinning, and we talk about quality. We talk about quality a lot, delivering a high quality service. And for us, it was really important that that quality came with a specific set of tangibles, deliverables, things that we, our sites, our investigators, our national hubs can adhere to. So over the course of 6 years, we've developed a set of site standards for C4C sites and a set of national hub standards across agreed domains. And these have been developed with industry and academic sites and country level representation so that it does cover the aspects that are important for all of the representatives and stakeholders. And we've also worked with Emprima and engaged to ensure that we are disseminating this and we are sharing the knowledge with respect to this so that we can have a harmonized approach towards these standards. And the benefits with respect to the trial support activities is that we have rolled out 11 proof of viability trials through setup and recruitment across hundreds of sites now, and we do have the experience. We are engaging with our partners in other specialties, the European reference networks, etc., to be able to map the overlap so that we can ensure that there is a harmonized approach and there is a consistent approach. And this is my final slide. Essentially, it's a summary slide. I was also given the brief to be quick. So I think what I really wanted to end on was the fact that, that the trial services brings together multiple synergies, multiple stakeholders. We have demonstrated, and we want to be able to work with you to be able to effectively support and further demonstrate our capabilities. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of combined collaborative effort, but essentially what we want to be able to ensure we do is that stay responsive and stay reflexive. Everyone has a superpower. My superpower is my team. So I just want to acknowledge my team for the unwavering support for all the last few years. Thank you.